Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Juma Bannister. Juma, it's great to have you on the show.
Gresh, is great to be here. I know you're still waiting for my podcast episode with you to come out, but in the meantime, we can do something like this and catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the opportunity of being on Juma's show, and I get to talk a little bit more about that. We get to flip the table, so to speak, so I can hear about all the awesome things he's been working on and he's doing and just the empire that he's building as well, too. So before we, of course, jump into the interview, I want to read a little bit more about Juma so you can hear about some of those awesome things that he's been working on. And Juma is the co-founder and executive creative director of Relate Studios, a strategic marketing and production company. He's been working in creative industries for over 21 years, serving corporate clients mainly in finance, energy, and tech industries. Over the past 3 years, he's created over 550 pieces of content and hosted over 70 episodes on his live show, The Useful Content Creation Show, where he interviewed content practitioners and creators from all around the world. When it comes to marketing, he believes the true purpose of content is to build long-term relationships. And as Juma said, and I said too, it was definitely a pleasure being on the show. I want to give him a little shout out as well too, because it had to be one of the most enjoyable episodes that I've been on, just because you can tell that Juma did his homework. He's all about the relationships, as I read about, and he says, so he definitely talked the talk and walked the walk. And I was reading a little bit more about him, and he said that relationship is part of his DNA. He said relationships are at the core of building anything significant. And he's an extremely talented and creative individual. And I think you might even mention in an interview that your dad was also a creative, was an artist as well too. So he has a wealth of knowledge, and I just want everybody to buckle in and hear about all the awesome things that he's working on. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community, Juma?
Of course. Let's go.
Let's get it started then. So to kind of kick everything off, let's rewind that clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
All right. So my story is very interesting, and at the same time, it's kind of normal. So I didn't really desire to be in business. That was not my first thing. I was a very good employee at all the jobs I worked at and was very willing to help build something that was not my own. It just so happened that when I continued to build my skill and talents, that it began to lean towards that. So I always had like side jobs and side hustles and things of that nature, but it was never something that I said, okay, I'm going to do this for a while and then I'm going to make it a full-time thing. But what happened is that when the very last job I had before I went full-time was at a company that the CEO of that company was very supportive of me. And he kind of said, well, you can't be in two places at once. If you feel like you need to do this, then you can't do that. So you have to kind of make a decision as to what you want to do. He kind of described it as he believes in God. So he says God is not schizophrenic. He wouldn't want you here and another place at the same time. So I said, that is so very true. And so while I was at that company, that was the longest job I'd had for about 4 years. Entering the company, I knew I was going to leave eventually. And I developed my skill inside of that. And the skill that I didn't have when I entered the company was photography. And while I was there, I developed that particular skill inside of the company. Interestingly, I shot that CEO's wedding. I shot his daughter's wedding. I shot his son's wedding and a lot of the people in the company at the time. So it ended up being a place for me to grow and develop. And when I left and I went full-time into wedding photography initially. Did that for about 3 years, built out the business, and then had a business partner change the entire business over into a marketing company more focused on video. And we've been building that out for the last 12 or so odd years. And of course, the business is not the same as it was at the beginning. The business has changed now to focus on some of the upstream things inside of marketing, like content strategy. And we do a lot of consultations on videos, where we also produce the content, hence the name Strategic Marketing and Production Company. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Nice. Well, I love you sharing that story. I love that part about God not being schizophrenic either. I think it's sometimes we forget of like, should I go left or should I go right? Let me try to go both ways at the same time. But really, we're supposed to lean into exactly what, we're called to do. And I think it's so important that you got that advice. And I think that it's even more important that you took that opportunity. You realized at that moment, it sounded like what steps you needed to take. And you had that opportunity to build your skills to get prepared for that step that you end up taking ultimately.
Yeah, yeah, and it was an interesting process because I knew going in that I would leave, but that was a job I had for the longest,
Hmm.
and that CEO was so very supportive of me, and I learned so much being in that business. Apart from my own business, that is the best place I've ever worked because I learned so much from him and from the team as well, the leadership team as well. And so I think if I hadn't gone there, I would not have been the business person I am today. So I think mentorship was a big principle inside of that experience.
Yeah, and shout out to him for being able to, I think so many times when, the word ego always comes up whenever you're starting something, you feel like you have the ego to feel like you can do something better. But at the same time, you kind of can't let that ego take over because it doesn't allow opportunities like it sounds like your mentor was able to do in terms of creating an opportunity for you to flourish, for you to become the business owner that you've been able to be today.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. And he was very good in sharing the things that he knew. One of the things that I always quote from him that I quote generally is that he used to say, suddenly takes a long time. And that was meant to say, you build, you build, you build, you build, you build, and then something happens. And that was the exact process he did to build his business, and it was the exact process I am doing to build my business now. That I'm not trying to do everything all at once. I'm building piece by piece, brick by brick, slowly, being patient, being resilient, exercising grit, being disciplined, and then at some point you'll get to a place where things switch and change. So that's just one principle that I learned from him as well.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. The quote it kind of remind me of is secret to the overnight successes. It takes like 10 or 15 years. And you
Yeah,
sometimes forget about the bricks or sometimes the non-bricks, the things that don't go the way you want them to go that are built over time. But at the same time,
yeah.
when you see somebody's success, you don't see all the behind the scenes things that suddenly that you've been working on over and over again that finally, reaches that point.
Most definitely, most definitely.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I know you touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to drill down a little bit more into, how you're working with and serving your clients. Can you take us through what that looks like and what that process is?
All right. So right now, we used to be a full-on photography studio, but right now we've transitioned to more of the marketing part of it. Although one could argue that photography is a component of marketing. It's an outcome. It's a collateral that you get. And so my business partner, he teaches marketing and he's a qualified marketer. I have learned in the trenches along the way, and I've developed myself by active learning and also by doing some different sorts of study. And the best way to learn from me is to actually do it. And so what happened over the last few years inside of business is that we transitioned from providing the end part of it, which is the visual part of it, going up the supply chain into the content strategy part of it. So now what we do to serve our clients is that we help them develop, to plan, to execute on their content, mainly inside of the video space, because we believe that when you're developing a content strategy right now, that developing a video first content strategy is one of the ways that many people should go. Not everyone, but many people should go with a video first content strategy. And so we help people figure that out, how they're going to use the content, how they're going to target the people that they want to buy from them. And right now we're in the middle of planning a couple of big content strategies for people. And so that's how we serve. We tell people, this is the content you need. This is how you can use video at the center. And then we take that stuff that we tell them and the plan that we make, and then we go and we produce the other part of it. So we're both in the planning phase and in the production part of creating content.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, and I feel like, and I don't know if you've seen the same thing. Just when being in the industry for as long as you have, is that you start to see that when you have that end product, sometimes people are so focused on that end product that they don't think about the strategy. They don't even think about the why we're creating this or how to create it. Just any of those aspects. It sounds like you provide for your clients. So I feel like that's maybe the awareness around that has grown a lot more, where people are starting to understand that it's not just, hey, let me have this video. It's actually like,
Yeah,
how's that video going to help you to connect with the people that you're trying to serve?
absolutely, 100%. And I think that's something that is It's becoming more and more apparent because there's so much competition now. There's so many people doing so many things because the ability to access, even to create content has become easy. It's been democratized to the point where you have to stand out. And in order for you to stand out, you have to know what your message is. You have to know the people you're targeting and a series of other different things. So it's become more critical for people to take a close look at how they build, why are they building, as opposed to doing stuff. Back in the days, we used to, because I'm a trained printing press operator. That's what I was trained in. I was trained in print, and so I've operated massive presses, offset presses, CMYK inks, and printed different things. And back in the days, we used to just like print flyers and you would hand them out, and that would drive your business.
Hmm.
Now you can't do that anymore. Nobody wants to print a flyer and stand on a street corner and hand it out. Everybody wants to have a website and have social media going and have their content that they put out every day, have a podcast. And while that may not apply to everyone, some of that is like so true and so at the core of building out a solid brand. And so I think that's necessary.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and it sounds like even the ways that we've communicated, and I don't know if you feel like the principles have still stayed. Try, I'm sure they've evolved as well too. But it sounds like even if you've been using the print press, you were actually putting out flyers, or you're using social media, you have some of those same principles that you can leverage within your marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of it is still the same as in you have a message and you have to find the most efficient way to get that message to the people that matter to your business. And so in those times, the people that matter to your business might have been the people walking on the street, might have been the people close to your location. Now, because a lot of these businesses are global, you have to get to people by putting the content in a place where people can access it, which is the internet, which is the social media platform, which is your website, which is the podcasting platforms. And so it's the times are just different. And so we have different methods.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I'm super curious about, the transition that you made. You mentioned that you had the photography business and you transitioned into, the video and the strategy that you all are doing now. I'm going to go back
Mhm.
to that quote, suddenly takes a long time that your mentor has said. How was that transition? Was that something that did happen? Was it the suddenly thing where it started to build up over time? Or was that something that you felt like guys were doing more behind the scenes and then you started to unveil that to clients?
All right, so this is a big thing in the business. So Ayn and I, my business partner and I, we started the business together. And initially we were primarily a wedding photography studio that did other types of work, right?
Hmm.
And in 2015, we started in 2011. In 2015, I began to feel a real sense that we can't continue this way. The weddings have a ceiling, and I felt like we kind of had hit the ceiling in our space, in our area, in the part of the industry that we were serving, and we couldn't go any further. So there was no room for expansion or growth anymore. And because I felt that in 2015, I went to another person who was a mentor, and we began to discuss that with him. We had a meeting, and I was pretty ready at that time to just drop weddings totally wholesale and just let's just jump into video, jump into corporate stuff. But that mentor looked at me and says, "No, you can't do that. You have to transition. There
Yeah.
has to be a method by which you go from one thing to the next without crashing the business." And even though I was excited to start, it actually took about, I would say, 6 to 7 years to transition from being in photography primarily to moving into the strategy part of it, the video part of it, video content, and working with those corporate clients and totally kind of sidelining weddings. So I haven't shot a wedding in earnest in about 3 years plus. And that we used to be shooting weddings every single week. So what happened is that how I describe it is that if you think about it as two different sounds that you have and how sound can pan in your headphones from left to right, the initial business is in your left ear and it's a certain volume and there's nothing in your right ear. And slowly it gradually pans from left to right. But in order for that to happen, you have to plan ahead. You have to seek the clients that you want. So you have to go out there and speak to people and you have to reduce the type of work that that you've been getting in your portfolio and replace that with a new type of work that you want to get. So in our instance, we separated out the businesses. The wedding businesses was cut and was made separate to the corporate business. And we began to put energy inside of developing content for the corporate side. And as we got more business, we added to the portfolio. We got more business, we added to the portfolio, and that grew over time. And over time, we were able to take the sound of the weddings, reduce it, and take the sound of the corporate and increase it. And that transition properly took about 7 years to get done.
Nice. I appreciate you so much in providing, a little bit more behind the scenes, of that and what that looks like. Because I think so many times when we have these ideas or we know that we want to pivot or transition, it's important that it doesn't happen that quickly. Because often, business has its ebbs and flows as it is anyways. And then even it
Mm.
takes usually longer to make sure you're bringing on client, the prospect, just all those things that go into bringing on a client and getting them in the doors. That 6 to 7 years was what you experienced. And I think as we start to even sometimes have really ambitious goals, we realize that they don't happen suddenly, they don't happen overnight, and
Yeah.
they do take time for those to come to fruition.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. If anybody comes and tells you that you're going to be in a totally different place without having started anything in a few months, they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Even your mentality has to shift. In terms of how you deal with the business. It's brand new clients, it's a brand new market. You have to learn the market. And there's a ton of different things. So there's external, internal, and then there's all those relationships you have to build. It's really a process. So it's never quick. It's never quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Go back to suddenly and the overnight success is exactly the same thing in all aspects of life, it seems. So,
Yeah.
do you feel like your secret sauce, it could be for yourself, the business, or a combination of both, is that ability to kind of, first of all, have that strategy, but also understand how the relationship building kind of goes hand in hand? Do you feel like that's part of what sets you all apart and makes you unique?
Yeah. So the relationship part is very big, both from a where the clients come from perspective, and also from our ethos, what we believe in, and how we treat with content and everything that we produce. It's a big deal for me. That's you would have read that in my bio that that is something that is important to me. That relationship aspect of it, and also helping our clients to build those long-term relationships. So taking a piece of us and showing clients how to do that. Now, another aspect of that is the relationships that we built inside of shooting weddings, interestingly, because, it's so strange. When we were in our 20s doing that business, everybody getting married was around that age. And so we met these people we could relate because we were around the same age. Some of them became good friends. And then they transitioned into their corporate life, their corporate job. They opened businesses. And now we have this pool of people that we know who, when they're looking for something that we can provide, they come and say, I know you shot my wedding 5 years ago, but I have this business. We need to do some marketing in this area. Can you do it? And the answer to that question obviously is yes. And the reason they can trust us is because we were there on the most important day of their life already.
Mhm.
So they know they can trust us. We were there when they were at their most vulnerable. So they know they can trust us. So that's already built. And so we try, many of the people who we do work for now, we did work for then, but the context has just shifted. And so we took them across. So that aspect of relationship has sustained the business, as well as the new part of it, which is how do you take this content and build relationship with people that you don't know in order to build that trust so that they can buy from you later on. And so those are the two aspects of it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And especially like having that long term focus because you start to understand that, today is not just about today. Today is about tomorrow. It's about next year. It's about, all
Yeah.
those things. And I think when you have that relationship and long term focus, you start to, like you said, you start to approach. I think there's a quote that the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. And if you
Yeah.
approach your content that you're creating the same way you would approach if it's your number one client or even number 10 client, whatever it is, you will approach that in a certain way. And I think if you have that mentality, and that's going to only, lead you to the success that you want to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the core of who we are. Is a business is normally a reflection of the leader. The primary leader is normally, even though I have 50-50 partners, I'm the primary in the business. So a lot of the thing, and here's how I say it. I say the business is built on the heart of the leader. The people who you end up joining yourself to inside of your business is a reflection of those people who you would want around you anyway.
Mm.
Um, and you could hire someone for skill, but it's highly likely that wouldn't work out if there's a clash in values. And so that's something that we have learned over the years. The people who we had from the beginning are still around. So it's something that has proven to be true. And it really is built on relationship, shared values, my heart for having people inside of the business who can provide. Because I have a big thing about people who are employed by us have to be able to provide for their families, have to be able to have a stable life. And, I don't want people to struggle and have to think about, how am I going to send my kids to school? We want to be able to provide a safe place for people who come to be a part of Relate. And that's my big dream. My big dream is that everyone who is employed by us is able to have a stable family, stable life, and provide for themselves. And so some aspects of life they don't have to worry about. And for me, that will be a win if we were able to do that. And I think the number in my head, I was thinking about it recently. The number in my head is 12 families. I don't know why that's my number. The number in my head is 12 families. If we are able to provide for 12 families and they don't have to struggle, in my mind, that's a massive win. The business, technically, in some regards, is secondary, but being able to provide this space of you can build this thing inside your family, this strong relationship, and you can build your life out to give your kids an opportunity, to give the people around you an opportunity wherever you live. If you can do that, that for me is a massive win. So that's just something that's been on my heart as well.
Nice. I appreciate you sharing that. And again, it goes back to the relationship and being and understanding that strategy. And like, I think so many times we think about that from our clients and customers, but it's also the people that are on our team and how it creates that ripple effect. Because like you said so well, if you're affecting somebody's family, you're impacting their kids, you're impacting their kids, because as they grow up and they
Yeah.
understand those values, it just creates that ripple effect that goes from generation upon generation.
Yeah. Well, 100%. And I'm big on that. I like to treat my people well. I don't know. In some regards, I'm very hard. Like things have to be done this way. We're talking about it earlier while we were in the shoot that we're doing right now.
Mhm.
I think the word is pedantic.
Mhm.
Like it has to get done this way. This has to be excellent. And in some ways, I'm pretty soft. Like, okay, how are you going to get to work? How are you going to, you have to drop your kid off, somebody's sick. In some ways, I'm like that. And I think both is needed. And the counter to me is my business partner because he tends to be more analytical. And
Okay.
so we have a nice balance inside of that. So having him have even that relationship is important inside of the business.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, and I always say we sometimes forget about the human aspect of business, and I think that you
Yeah.
being able to kind of speak to that is huge. But I almost think that sometimes the greatest way you can show love and appreciation and respect for people, even on your team, is sometimes to hold them accountable, to make them be their
Yeah.
best selves. And I think that doesn't mean like,
Yes.
oh, just leaving you on the corner. I hope you get to work. It's sometimes saying, hey, how are you going to get to work? But at the same time, saying, now that we're here, let me hold you to the excellence that I see within you. And I think that shows a
Yeah.
lot, of your leadership and the culture that you created.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think that's what you said is so important because the people who come to us, they come with nothing mostly. We don't hire superstars. We hire
Mhm.
people who want to grow. And
Mhm.
then that has been the way. The new wave of people we're probably going to hire may not be like that, but I still have a thing for young people who have a desire to grow and who want to learn, and we can mold them. They don't have to stay with us, but we have to set a platform for them so that they can build other things in life. So we when I look for people who are fit in Relate, I don't generally look for people who are the most talented. I look for people who have a desire, and so we can foster things inside of them so that they can build their life in any way they see. They could leave us and go build their life any way they want to build it. So that's usually the case.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And you can't teach desire. So, if you have somebody that has that hunger, that passion, that just sometimes even personal pride, just to want to make sure that they're doing a great thing, then I think that of course sometimes the skills, the processes, the systems, all those things can be taught a lot better. But if you don't have
Yeah.
that pride, that desire, then it's really hard to sometimes teach that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit. And I want to
Mhm.
ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or even a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
I think the thing that I had struggled with for a long time that I kind of figured out And I think people may have mentioned this already. Uh, it's a known thing, which is that you try to focus on one thing at a time. When I was younger, I used to when they would I would in school they would give the report, my report for school. It always used to say, "I do good work, but I'm too restless. I do good work, but he's too restless. He does good work, but he's too restless. I don't want to sit still." Now, maybe back in those days, if they were diagnosing ADHD, they may have diagnosed me. But in those days, you're just restless, right? Or you're
Right.
miserable or whatever they call it. And that had gone straight into my adult life, right? And so what I do is that as a CEO or somebody who runs a business, is I try to tell people, don't try to focus on multiple things when you are looking to accomplish a particular goal in a particular time frame. Forget everything else, focus on this one thing. There's really no such thing as multitasking. It just makes you less productive. So if you're doing one thing, do one thing. And in order for me to do one thing, sometimes what I have to do is take the thing that's on me and give it to somebody else to do, which I'm sure you figured out, right? So take the thing that's on me and say, you do this. You do this while I'm doing this. I know this was originally meant for me, but you can take on this responsibility. And so I will have the room to do other things that are important. And so, as a hack, I would just say focus on one thing at a time and don't get too distracted by other things, even though they're looming over you, because sometimes they loom and you feel the pressure of it. Lock the pressure out, focus on one thing.
Yeah, that's so powerful. One of my favorite books is the one thing, and I think the whole idea is like find the one thing that by doing it, everything else is easier and necessary. And I think if that one thing is especially if it's so impactful, it allows you to open up opportunities to be able to have more people, to be able to delegate more things, just all of those
Yeah.
things because you're so focused on that thing that's really moving that needle forward more than anything else. It kind of reminded me of like what your mentor told you as well too. And there's a quote where you can't steal second if your foot is on first. You have to take your foot off to
Mhm.
go to the next base. And if you don't
Yeah.
have that mentality, you're trying to hold on to two things. You're gonna end up being sitting on the sideline because you're out from that perspective and in the way
Yeah.
that you approach that.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Don't split your attention. You try to, and it applies to your family life too. If you're with your family, try as much as possible to give the situation that you're in the attention it needs. So when I'm home with my girls, and I have a rule. I have a home office. When they come or they knock on the door, they come into the office. I stop what I'm doing. The only time I don't stop what I'm doing is if I'm in a recording like this and I can't stop.
Right, right.
But if it's something I can stop, I stop what I'm doing. I take my hands off the mouse and the keyboard. I turn towards them and I talk and we have a conversation. And sometimes they're saying, come outside to see this. Sometimes they have something to show me. And while I'm in that moment with them over those 2, 3 minutes or whatever, and sometimes that's all they need, it's just them. It's just me and them. I'm not typing while talking off to the side or clicking while talking off to the side. I've stopped what I'm doing and I'm focusing on this conversation right now. And they learn that that's a value that they need to have. And they could say, okay, their father gave them this particular attention. He did the work, but when I was asking this important question, he was able to stop and give a response. And that works that's how it applies in family, but it works in all areas of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many times you hear that, especially, with kids, like they grow up and then you're like, where did the time go? And you want to try to be as
Yeah.
present as possible for those times. But I think the same thing, like you mentioned, you talk about, being on a shoot with the client and having that experience of what that is, or even, having somebody that's on the team that has matured, that has grown, you have seen growth in, and they go to a different position or whatever happens, you want to be able to kind of harness and appreciate those times and those moments. And you don't do that if you are not staying present to that situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. What would you consider to be a little bit more of what I call a CEO nugget? That could be a little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice. I like to say it might be something you would tell your favorite client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Wow. What would I tell my younger business self? I would definitely tell my younger business self to Just be patient. Not, you know, t- there are things that will happen that you don't like, but be patient and allow for the process. But don't let the process run through you. Engage with it. And so I would say because I have a business partner that, and this is specifically for people who want to have business partners, like are not employees but people who they partner with. We had to work out our particular personalities in the beginning, and I would say in a case like that, you have to be clear about who has the last word, who's the primary leader. Even though you're in it 50-50 and the money is split 50-50, and defining who's the primary leader, and then out of that defining roles is very important. I know some people don't believe in partnerships. Some people actually speak against it strongly, that they want to be the only person who is able to run and make decisions. I'm saying in a partnership, you still have to have a primary leader, and that person has the last say. But if you are building a partnership with someone, define that at the very beginning, at the outset. Don't come in ignorant and say it'll be all be fine, it'll work out. No, define it at the beginning, at the start. Who is the primary leader? Who does the vision come from? What is the touchdown point for where we're going and how we're building this business? If that person is identified, then we know where the direction for the business and the nature and the values of the business come from. And then you're okay to build. And the other person has to agree and come alongside and build that. And they have to align themselves in that way. And so this is just advice for people who want to build partnerships. Define it from the outset, let it be clear, and then you can build it together.
Nice. I love that. And I think that anytime you have an opportunity, again, you have to go back to that ego part where you don't allow the ego to take over, and you can find something or somebody that you can, partner with, and you can have that iron sharpen iron where you're great at this and I'm great
Yeah.
at this. And you're able to outline, as you said so well, this is how we're going to operate, as a team, but you understand like the superpowers you both have and how bringing those superpowers together is only going to make you more unstoppable. Why wouldn't you do that? And I think that, really, being able to kind of understand that, respect that, understand, and respect the lane in your superpower and how those two things and work together in people is really how you can go to another level if you allow it to happen, of
Yeah,
course.
most definitely, without a doubt. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Juma, now I want to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So, Juma, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Yeah, I think the main thing is being selfless and sacrifice. That you're building it for you, and you're going to get you're taking the most risk, so you get the most reward, but also that you're not building it in isolation, and it is selflessness and sacrifice that's required. Because I think about the people all the time. I think about the people who work for me all the time. They go to bed and sleep, and I think about them. And I think it's very important as somebody who's running a business, as a CEO, that you don't ever get disconnected from that. Because depending on what the size of the business, let's just suppose you have 1,000 employees, you're not going to know everyone personally. But you have to have this understanding that those people are extremely important. Every number has a life connected to it. And I think for me, it's really selflessness and sacrifice at the core. You know, business savvy is important. The ability to network is important. Strategy is important. But the people, in my mind, are the most critical thing.
Absolutely. I love that being able to kind of have that selflessness and sacrificing, because I think so many times we don't look at the steps that we take or things that we do from that perspective. But I think if we're always using that lens, like you mentioned, even if it's 1,000 or it's one or 10 million, whatever that number is, when you have that kind of mentality or even that culture that I think you're building as a leader, it starts to trickle down and really create, again, that reverberation throughout the entire organization. So if you start to care for people, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you show that,
Yeah,
then that's only going to make that impact even more strongly for the people and the families of those people as well.
yeah, definitely, without a doubt.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Juma, truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I want to do now is pass the mic to you, just so that you can let us know if there's anything additional you want to let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best people get a hold of you, find out about your show, and all the awesome things that you and your team are working on.
All right, thanks a lot, Gresh. So yeah, I mean, I think I would love people if people could listen to you on my podcast that's coming up soon. So they can find that by going on any one of the podcasting platforms and searching useful content. Is a useful content podcast. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, do that as well. I'm the guy with the red background. Unlike today, I have a black background. Usually I have a red background and a red shirt. So I'm kind of like doing a different thing today.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, just check me out and listen to the episode with me and Gresh, which will be coming out sometime early next year. And yeah, and we can connect there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Juma. To make it even easier, we're gonna have the links and information in the show notes. Yeah, I didn't. I was looking for all the red. I thought this was Clark Kent, or you had been somebody had stolen your identity or something like that. But I love that we had the opportunity to chat with you while you're on scene, which I think is super awesome. But I think even more, like I appreciate so much. Like again, I say it and I say it again, that we forget about the human part of business, and we forget about how that affects the people that are on our team, the people that we're serving, the content that we create, the video. All this is a reflection of who you are, your values, and the things that you provide and hold near and dear to your heart. So thank you so much for embodying that, for being a leader for that. Appreciate your time, and look forward to having you on again, and have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Can I just say one more thing? I want to put
Go
a
for it.
plug for where I am right now. Hey, Jason, what's the website again?
Affordableimports.com.
Not TT?
Yeah, that's not me. Make sure.
Yeah, so where I'm right now is a studio. It's a full-fledged studio. We're doing
Affordableimportstt.com.
affordable imports. Does it have a dash in it?
No.
Affordableimportstt.com. I want to plug them because a relationship again. I wouldn't have this. I'm sitting down in the business owner's office chair right now, and I'm thankful for him allowing me to record here. Otherwise, I would have had to drive some miles to go home to record, which would have been pretty challenging. So I'm thankful for them. So I want to plug them too and put them in the show notes if possible. So affordableimportstt.com. Excellent studio here in my home country of Trinidad and Tobago.
Absolutely, yeah. They'll definitely be linked in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for giving that shout out. Thank you so much for the business owner as well too, for giving his office, his chair, and all the things in between and all around. So thank you so much again, my friend, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Great. Wonderful conversation. Thanks, Gresh.